hockey fans, are you ready to brave the wild? With me, your host, Paladino Joey, or Joey Awajan. Brave the Wild is available on thesportstuff.com, iTunes, Stitcher, and Double Twist. Nice to be back on board once again today, as this will be the final regular season show, as final regular season game is coming up tonight against the San Jose Sharks. That's Chris over there in Northern California. Yep, big shout out to him in case he's listening. Teal Town is the name of his podcast with some other guys there. They're going to make the playoffs. They've really stepped up after a not so good season last year, and both teams struggled last year late in the year. The Wild ended up finishing okay, and yeah, unfortunately we limped into the playoffs and things went icky. The Wild were playing very well, and then unfortunately Dallas ended up being a bigger loss than it was. Dallas, Texas, a 4-1 loss on the 31st of March, a terrible way to end the month, a sloppy game, a yucky game. But then the Minnesota Wild, it's haunting considering just two episodes ago of Brave the Wild, I talked about how Ryan Suter is a guy he's like that left tackle on your football team who it's like you only talk about him when he makes a mistake or like he has a bad game, but you miss all the good that he does, all the value he does, and then all of a sudden he's gone because of injury. And a guy who had never really been injured. He just missed a little time with the mumps, and he got suspended for a game because of a hit and such. Kind of a lame thing, but it is what it is. Only missed 5 games and so many with the Minnesota Wild since that big, gigantic July 4th signing in 2012. And then here we are, finding out that he banged his ankle against the wall there. It looked like it twisted before it even went as he was going behind the Dallas net. And just the strangest freak injury. It didn't look bad at first, and then it's like it twisted the wrong way, and then he's just he's kneeling down on the ice and needs to be helped off, and it's like, hopefully he just turned it, but odds are he probably broke the fibula. There's the tibia, that's obviously your big giant shin bone. That would be, yeah, but there's the fibula, and then it turns out there's another injury, the talus.
What?
Yeah, the talus. That's a small little bone in the middle of your ankle that kind of helps your foot move around and such. So a very crucial bone, kind of like the scaphoid bone. I broke that in my wrist many years ago. That takes 3 to 6 months to heal. Months. Bones usually take 6 weeks to heal. Now, I'm not a doctor, but it's interesting to sit down and study and look at this stuff just for curiosity and look at the situation. And it turns out this type of injury, if it was a different sport, I know a lot of you have probably heard this in the local media and such, but maybe some of you haven't. So just in case you haven't, this would be a career-ending injury for, say, a football player, basketball player, soccer player. But luckily in hockey, your foot's more restricted because it's in a tight boot, a skate. So luckily, the situation for Ryan Suter, well, it's going to be very grueling, as Michael Russo said, and that's probably the best way to describe it, because we're talking 4 bleeping months with zero, and I mean zero pressure on Ryan Suter's foot. So he's been moving around his house with a scooter. So all the activity he likes to do in the off season, work on his farm in Wisconsin and help build this arena and such, and renovate it and such over there. Well, he's going to be around, but he's not going to be able to actually do any physical work because he can't stand up. He cannot put any pressure on that bone, that talus bone. It's a little roundish bone in the center of your ankle area, and of course the fibula is a bone that a lot of people break when they break their ankle, so to speak. So it's a little bone on the edge of your leg, the smaller one, of course, not the tibia, and quite unfortunate, quite scary, quite sucky, as of course the star left shot defenseman for the Wild, a position that was extremely rich, ends up being, well, a position of need, at least for the time being, because Ryan Suter will not be available to even stand up until August. So that's going to be pretty rough. Think about that. He won't even be able to stand up until August. That's pretty crazy stuff. So definitely a different type of show today. Of course, we're wrapping up the regular season. That Dallas game was yucky. I don't really want to say a whole lot about it. It was, of course, the end of March, and yeah, it's not a good way to end it. It was a sloppy game. Boudreau was frustrated, this and that. Of course he's frustrated, and of course everyone else is frustrated, but it ends up being an awful game. Sagan joins Mr. Eric Stahl in the 40-goal club, so good for him. Zach Parise continued his very strong play after a beautiful pass from Mikael Granlund, continuing to do the chemistry with Granlund and Parise has been pretty nice. Koivu, Granlund, Parise, nice group of guys there, and the chemistry's been good, and it's been playing well. Hopefully they can continue that into the postseason. So that's the positive that you got out of the game, but other than that, just not a very overall good game. Just sloppy, out of position. Ryan Murphy looked awful. panicking, he just looked out of sync out there, and I think a lot of people really begging and hoping and praying that Mr. Spurgeon would return. Immediately, though, when I knew Ryan Suter was hurt, it's like Carson Soucy, because obviously it's a position of richness in the farm system. Nick Seeler, Ryan, did I call him Ryan Sucy? Yeah, well, because Ryan Suter, Carson Soucy, also left shot defense, and only one of them would be able to come up with the Wild because it's so rich. And of course, Jonas Brodin's a left shot defenseman. And I talk about the right-left thing a lot because it's important. You can't have two guys with the same shot on the playing together in the same pairing. And there's only really, you can only have 3 pairings out there at a time. Maybe there's 4 of one, and the other guy gets scratched, and that's often what would happen at the left shot. In the past, it was the right shot that was slightly rich, but not really. You had Christian Foley and Nate Prosser. One of them would get scratched. Well, now, of course, right shot defense, and we got something interesting coming up. We'll talk about that in the prospects, and I could even bring it up now because it's more playoff related than prospect related now as we move forward. Overall, the Wild finished 1-2-1 during the course of this week. The one win was against Edmonton, and that was Carson Soucy's NHL debut on April 2nd. God rest Chloe Cat, who was put to sleep 11 years ago on that day. And there's number 11, Zach Parise, who had an awesome game. 2 goals in this one. He had a nice little strip and just went down by himself and scored. You're seeing a scoring touch from Zach Parise that we haven't seen in years, and it's beautiful because, of course, the back injury and other injuries off and on had plagued Zach Parise the last 2 to 3 years. And now you're seeing the Zach Parise we saw before when he was a 30-goal guy. And he looks like the 30-goal guy now. That's for damn sure. He'd be on pace for easily 30 goals because he's played less than half a season and he's got 15. So do the math there. Wonderful bit of scoring for Zach Parise. And you'd think the assists would catch up as well during the course of a full regular season. So he's looking at least like that 65, 70-point guy who could get 30 goals that he'd been most of his career. And, of course, with the New Jersey Devils, he had a huge year, 45 goals once, and a 90-point season in there. And that was awesome. But, of course, injuries followed after that, and he became more of a 30-goal, 60-point guy after that. Joel Eriksson Ek added an empty netter. That was wonderful. 6th goal of the season for Joel Eriksson Ek, and that was good to see. Cam Talbot still very, very sharp in the game, but Devin Dubnyk more sharp, and that's great. Devin Dubnyk was able to shut out his former team, and of course the Wild's defense was stifling. Carson Soucy looked awesome in his debut. Very solid, moving the puck forward, taking the puck away from Edmonton forward. And again, just smart, solid hockey, and that's what you like to see. And it's cool to see Steeler moved up to that second pairing, of course, with Ryan Murphy. Boy, you're going to need Soucy with the Ryan Murphy and Prosser down with Soucy, kind of getting Soucy started. Only 15 and a half minutes, but still a very strong, solid 15 and a half minutes. He actually led all defensemen, tied with Dumba with 3 shots on goal, did Carson Soucy. And it's not surprising. He's obviously excited to be out there, and that's great to see. Ryan Murphy actually had the least shifts in the game, but he had some long ones in there. The guy just looks adequate and at best, and of course scary at times is Ryan Murphy, and that's why he struggled at the NHL level, whereas beforehand he was a very highly touted player coming out of college. And it's too bad his career has kind of been slowed over the course of time. Again, Jordan Greenway, he's had an okay start to his career, but you can't expect too much. And the Wild are going to be filled with a lot of young guys here as we move forward. Though Soucy, of course, exchanged for another Wild prospect, significant, who shoots from the other side, which is quite strange, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Jared Spurgeon expected to return again, which makes things strange, but I'm not sure what the Wild are going to do with that. Other than just going to have the other guy along for the ride. Okay, you know who it is, but we'll get to it in a couple seconds here. Jared Spurgeon hopefully going to return at some point. The Wild defense, tough situation, but they did a wonderful job in the Edmonton game. And, it's insane and crazy to think of how Suter's gone and how bad that is. And it really is. 51-point season, a career high. After the great career Ryan Suter's had, he finally reached the 50-point mark. Matt Dumba, at the end of this week, had gotten up to 49. As Darkwing Dumba did score against the Ducks, and he was the only scorer against the Ducks, which really is frustrating. But he's had an overtime game winner against them before, and it's cool to see. But Matt Dumba at 49 points on the year. He's nearing the 50-point mark. Amazing season for Matt Dumba. Offensively, defensively, off and on, not so good, but some good moments here and there. Jonas Brodin continues to lead the team in plus and minus, which is great. Obviously, stay-at-home defenseman, we know that. But a guy who's capable of some offense on occasion, depending on who his pairing was with. Last year with Christian Folin, you finally saw a little bit of offense out of Jonas Brodin. But then once Folin started getting hurt, he had that knee injury, things weren't quite the same. And Folin came back, and he wasn't the same. And, well, he ended up being a part of a pretty tough goal against the Wild against the LA Kings, and that was a bummer. But Soucy, nice, strong debut, and well done. And I think he's going to have a solid NHL career. It's too bad he's getting sent down now from the left shot. I don't know what the Wild are doing with that one, but I guess we'll figure it out in a little bit. I don't know. Strange, but I guess Olofsson is healthy enough to come back. I guess that's one of the reasons, but I'm not sure. I guess. I think Soucy deserves to be out there, but I suppose, there's nothing wrong with giving Olofsson a chance. Olofsson is a significantly higher draft pick than Carson Soucy, but I do think Carson Soucy deserves to be in the NHL. I've been extremely impressed with his development in the AHL. He's become a very strong, smart defenseman, as is Nick Steeler, who absolutely belongs in the NHL for 10 years plus, hopefully, for his sake. It's kind of like the one thing, it's like, maybe it's because they're kind of similar, obviously, Soucy and Steeler. They're kind of Willie Mitchell types, tough guys who play strong, smart defense, right place, right time, and occasionally can rough it up a little bit when need be, 15, 20-point type of guys, whereas the other prospect, hopefully at some point in time, can add a bit of offense. Be a bit like Jared Spurgeon from the right shot. Again, we'll talk about him in a second. But the Wild, well done. Victory over the Edmonton Oilers. Maybe the very last regular season victory for the Minnesota Wild this season, unless they can get it done against the Sharks tonight. And I hope they can. Both teams had been playing better, now dropping off a teeny bit. Of course, the Wild dropping off a bit shell-shocked with the Ryan Suter injury. The game in Anaheim on the 4th of April was, the Wild looked like the better team for a little while. But then it's just Anaheim kind of matched everything we did, and then ended up being a little tiny bit better, unfortunately, as the two third-place teams in the Western Conference. Third place in the Pacific, third place in the Central. Anaheim Ducks ended up winning 3-1 down the stretch. Matt Dumba with his 13th goal of the season on the power play got us all very excited in that second period, but then things again slowly started to deteriorate, and the Wild unable to finish the job. It was kind of a boring game. The Wild would have their chances, but it just seemed like nothing was getting by. And Ryan Miller, again, I talked about him on the last episode. What a strong backup he's been. When he's in a starter's role, he's not good. But when he's in a backup role, he's very strong. He's definitely kept himself in the NHL. Obviously, he was a very good goalie years ago, but his last 2 years of Vancouver and such, he'd been disappointing and struggled. And he's done very well as the backup goalie. Veteran backup behind John Gibson for the Anaheim Ducks. And Gibson's been oft injured during the course of the season, but overall, definitely long-term goalie of the future for the Ducks. He's really stepped up. Cogliano, if I'm saying it correctly for the Italian accent, Cogliano, not Cogliano, was able to score in the game along with Nick Ritchie down the stretch. Very, very frustrating. The Andre Case goal just left you kind of this heartbreaking, the way things kind of deteriorated in this one. It's like Devin Dubnyk was awfully frustrated, and then Cogliano was able to finish the job, put the Ducks up 3-1, and you knew the Wild were probably not going to win the game. Obviously, it was an empty net situation. Wild tried as they might. Boudreau pulled the goalie kind of early, but that's kind of the way it is nowadays. It's like you never score. It's always the other team always gets the empty net goal, and that seems to be how it is. The Wild, again, it seemed like they had a million scoring chances, but nothing seemed to work other than Matt Dumba's power play goal. It's just a bummer, heartbreaking. Andre Case goal. Oh man, it was frustrating. Kind of a situation where it was like Dubnyk, the puck was just kind of bouncing, and Case was able to just flip it past him. The defense in front kind of collapsed, and it was just bleeping frustrating. And that's basically what took place during the course of the game. You're hoping for a disallowed goal down the stretch, but of course things didn't go that way. That was in the Kings game, actually. I'm looking at the wrong thing. But very, very frustrating game. You thought the Wild were going to win that one, or at least have a chance. They were outplaying the Ducks for a little while, but of course things snowballed the way they did. And the Ducks have played very well against the Wild, as they had many years in the past. But since Boudreau first got to Minnesota, it looked like Minnesota was going to own Anaheim for a few years, but no, just half a year or so, and it's been frustrating ever since. Back-to-back situation in Los Angeles, Alex Stalock and net. And I don't know, Stalock, he looks good out there, and then he doesn't look good. He gets beat on some weak ones here, 5-4 in overtime in this situation. Nate Prosser ended up getting a shorty, which was awesome. of a feed from Mikko Koivu, shorthanded goal. Nate Prosser putting the Wild, tying the game up. It was an awesome play. I was thinking it's the best goal of Prosser's career, but no, he did have an overtime winner on Hockey Day Minnesota, so that's more appropriate, I suppose. Eric Stahl finally getting his 41st goal of the season to get the Wild back in the game after Dustin Brown basically just dominated and had a hat trick, and then he ended up getting his 4th goal of the season in overtime, or 4th goal of the game, pardon me. Dustin Brown's had a huge year for the LA Kings. Obviously, Anze Kopitar's in the 90-point range. As the LA Kings are a team, for me, I would be afraid of in the postseason. Absolutely. Ryan Murphy ended up getting his 2nd goal of the season. Steeler and Winnick also added points in this one. Steeler getting his 3rd point, so very cool in 21 games for the Minnesota Wild. Like I always say, I think I could see, Steeler, Soucy guys are going to be 15, 20-point guys. Just kind of adding assists here and there, but generally out there for their stay-at-home, strong, stalwart defense. Dumba added his 14th goal in this game. It's just a game where the better team won, unfortunately, as well as the Wild played in that 3rd period, an awesome 3rd period after a terrible 2nd period. Minnesota up 2-1 after the 1st. You felt good. You felt, okay, we got a shot at this, but it's the LA Kings, and they've been playing better. And they're a team this time of year, it's you better watch out. Watch out for the Los Angeles Kings. They reek of Nashville 2006, what year was it? 17. They reek of last year's Nashville Predators and, of course, 2012 and 2014 Kings. This team is playing really good right now. The only guy who hasn't been spectacular is Jonathan Quick. He's been good. He's not as spectacular as he's been in the past. That's the one thing you could kind of come back on. But overall, a bummer of a game. I mean, just it's kind of soft goals given up in this one. Dustin Brown, again, 4 goals in the game, 28 on the season. In that overtime period, it's just the same old story. You're 3-on-3. You're okay. Hopefully the Wild can get through this. It's heartbreaking we couldn't finish down the stretch in that 3rd period. Man, wouldn't that have been amazing, as the Wild had several chances on Jonathan Quick, but just nothing was going by at the end. I mean, you get 4 goals on Quick. You're feeling good about yourself after seeing Dustin Brown get a hat trick. Dustin Bleepin' Brown, who helped give Jason Pominville a concussion years ago, an elbow to the forehead. Thank you, Dustin. But, yes. God, that drive. Dustin Brown is one of the most unlikable players. Can't stand him. But it is what it is. And 3-on-3 hockey in Minnesota don't go together well. And we just don't have the right players out there at times, and it's like if the Wild don't score right away, the other team is going to score right away, and that's basically what took place in this one, and that's what's taking place in every overtime game for the Minnesota Wild in 3-on-3. The good part is overtime is not 3-on-3 in the playoffs, and the Wild have had good success in overtime in the playoffs. 2 7-game wins in Colorado, at least, over the course of time. 7th game wins anyway, and the Wild are perfect in 7th games so far in their in their playoff careers, which is good news for Bruce Boudreau. Hopefully that can continue. Minnesota Wild will be playing the Winnipeg Jets, as we'd found out at the point of this game, actually earlier in the day. It was official, the Minnesota Wild will be playing the Winnipeg Jets in the playoffs. So finally, kind of like a new Vancouver, like the Vancouver back in the day when they had top scorers and then very physical and a frustrating team to play against. A team that you just, it's entertaining, and what's good about this group is they're much closer to Minnesota, obviously. They're just right above Minnesota there in Manitoba. Literally right above Minnesota, kind of close to North Dakota as well. So much more of a local angle from the Winnipeg Jets and their fan base. It's still a hell of a drive, though. I mean, that's far. That's very far, because we're talking way up northwest Minnesota. But, hey, it's a lot closer than Vancouver. It's a lot closer than Los Angeles. It's closer than Calgary. It's closer than other places. Chicago, about the same, I suppose, because it's way, way far away, because obviously you got to go way west, too, at the western tip of Minnesota to northwestern tip of Minnesota to get to Winnipeg, Manitoba. So that kind of is what it is, but still, it's a fan base that likes to travel, and it's a very rowdy fan base, and, they're probably a little better than Packer fans, I would hope, and I would say yes. It's Canada, it's not Wisconsin, so it's not as bad. It's going to be an entertaining matchup, and we'll talk about them in a moment here as we head into the second segment. But that's what's taking place. A frustrating finish in Los Angeles. We will be previewing the Sharks game very briefly coming up. But obviously I quote-unquote settled the bet already because I don't think we we're going to win. And it wasn't really a bet. I just wanted to be nice. And obviously I talk about it too much already. Chicago and Winnipeg will be wrapping up their seasons tonight. That figure. Chicago and Winnipeg. Yuck, right? Blackhawks will not be going to the playoffs. The Minnesota Wild are, well, it's hard to believe that we've been in the playoffs more consecutively with a 6th consecutive playoff appearance. We're leading the Western Conference in that category, which is pretty weird when you consider certain teams missed the playoffs recently, like the Kings missed the playoffs recently, the Blackhawks missed the playoffs recently, and even St. Louis had a year not too long ago where they missed the playoffs. So it's kind of interesting when you sit down and think about that. Obviously, Colorado's hot and cold. Anaheim's had an achy year here and there, but the Ducks looking at the postseason again, and they'll be playing the Sharks. We'll talk about that. Well, they'll probably be playing the Sharks, but yeah, they will. It'll just be who gets home ice because the two are like a point apart from each other. Very, very tight Western Conference. A lot of these teams are almost the same, but unfortunately, there's a couple of super top teams, and unfortunately, Minnesota will be playing one of them in the first round. The good news is it is a division rival, which can help in a big way in terms of the Minnesota Wild have played fairly well against the Winnipeg Jets over the course of the season. So that's the good part between Minnesota and Winnipeg. So I kind of sit down and look at that here in a little bit. Mike Modano Award for the course of this past week or so, it's got to go to Zach Parise. He's been wonderful. He's been scoring. He's brought his scoring touch back. It's been exciting to see him play like Zach Parise again, and in some ways almost better in a way that says, he's been better than he's been in about 3 years, and it's great to see Zach Parise bringing that in, and we could really use it in the playoffs. Of course, Jordan Greenway will get his first playoff action right away, burning his first year of his entry-level contract, just like the other guy we're going to talk about in a moment. I might as well have just mentioned him already. I was going to rant about Tyler Ennis as well. That's a guy, it's like, again, the whole Luke Cunnin injury just drives you crazy because Tyler Ennis probably wouldn't even be skating if Luke Cunnin was available. I'd rather take my chances with Luke Cunnin doing something and, of course, gaining extremely valuable experience down the stretch here. The James Shepard Memorial, it's going to go to Tyler Ennis because he's just not a factor at all. And it's like you want to look at what it is. I mean, he's got 20 points on the season. I mean, I don't know how much money he's getting paid per goal during the course of the season, if you want to do the math there. About $4.6 million, and with 8 goals in the 72 games he's played, 20 points on the season. $4.6 million. Yeah. And you look at his game log and such, how often he's scored and the droughts he's had in between. And it's like he's been out there all these games, too. I mean, 72 games. It's not like he's been scratched every game. His last point was March the 10th. His last point was March the 10th. That's right. His last goal, February 19th. So that's, I mean, it's been eternity. February 19th. Let's look at his goal before that, February 2nd. So that's about 2 weeks right there. Over 2 weeks, actually. So then you go from February 2nd. You go down, 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 December 14th. December 14th.
What? I mean, that's freaking awful.
Unreal, man. I mean, that's, again, and it's like you can't keep complaining about the same thing over and over again. But yeah, maybe you should. I mean, it's so frustrating. He had a couple of little nice stretches in there where he had a goal just a couple games away and about a week away from the goal before that. But really, generally speaking, Tyler Ennis, again, his first game when he finally scored a goal, one of them was off his skate. So it's like, okay, it's kind of a lucky bounce there for Mr. Tyler Ennis. It was like off his skate and off the defender's skate as well. So overall, Tyler Ennis, I mean, what else does he do? He's meant to be a skill-scoring player. And other than that, he's a great friend for Mr. Jared Spurgeon. And yeah, he was a good player years ago with Buffalo, but really the last few years, not so much. And it's depressing. So I don't know. You sit down and think about that. Again, Luke Cunnin would probably be skating instead of Tyler Ennis going into the playoffs. And of course, Ryan Suter's injury. And then you get a weird situation coming up with the defenseman. And I'll say it now, obviously. Well, I want to save it for the prospect segment. I want to get into it and just get on with it, but it'll continue. Of course, it's all Minnesota Wild anyway when we talk about this. So we will take a break. We're going to talk about the Sharks game and, of course, preview the Winnipeg Jets game. The schedule isn't out yet, but might as well just talk about the series in general heading into this whole situation coming up. are back here on Brave the Wild. We're going to do things a little differently this episode because we're heading into the postseason and such. I'm going to do the prospects right now before I talk about the Sharks and the Winnipeg Jets series, which should start late next week, I'm guessing. That's basically what they're saying, and it's what it should be, like Thursday or Friday, something like that. And, of course, in Winnipeg, Manitoba to open things out like it always is. So let's look at the prospects a little bit and such. Well, the Minnesota Wild ended up calling up Louis Belpedio. We did sign him to a 2-year entry-level contract. That's the guy I've been talking about and hinting at. And I just wanted to talk about it now as we're heading into the playoffs and its prospects and such. It's kind of like the lead story, we'll say, with the Minnesota Wild prospects. Carson Soucy, who, of course, is a left shot, has been sent down. Kind of strange, but I guess that must mean Gustav Olsson's healthier again, I guess, from the concussion and such. That's who they're looking to play. Unless they're going to play somebody out of position. That's the only other explanation I can come up with. Louis Belpedio is a right shot, which you will already have 3 of them in place. And, of course, Jared Spurgeon coming back. Are we going to sit Ryan Murphy tonight and play Louis Belpedio? Wouldn't surprise me. I don't think you want to sit Nate Prosser down, or unless you're protecting Matt Dumba going into the Sharks game from any type of thing, and you want to have him healthy for the playoffs. I'm not sure what the thought process is. Also, of course, it's only a 2-year entry-level contract, only 2 years, and you're burning one of the years just to play Louis Belpedio in the final game of the regular season, and hopefully into the postseason. We'll see what happens. Louis Belpedio only had 10 games in the AHL and 2 assists. It was a slow starter. It took him till his 8th game in the AHL to get his first assist. So kind of a slow start for him, of course, but you're not expecting a whole lot jumping in. I mean, Luke Cunnin was very slow to start in the AHL, and he started to kind of come into stride, got called up to Minnesota and all that. It was time to keep him up here in the NHL level, and within 2 games, he tore an ACL, which was Luke Cunnin's case. So heartbreaking situation there for Luke Cunnin. And, of course, that's why Tyler Ennis is active still. Jordan Greenway, of course, on the roster going into the playoffs, and he'll be valuable against those Winnipeg Jets, I can only imagine. In that case, Iowa Wild had another stinker of a week, but finally did something last night, winning 7-3. That was good. Sam, I almost called him Matt. Sam Anas had a 2-goal game, 59 points total on the season, 25 goals. It's a damn shame that Sam Anas was never once called up to the Minnesota Wild during the course of this season. Cal O'Reilly also added 3 assists, so he maintains the team lead in scoring with 60 points, 46 assists. He's definitely been the top center for the Iowa Wild, but a career minor leaguer, unfortunately, at 30 years of age. Kyle Rau also had a 3-point game, 1 goal and 2 assists, 44 points on the season. Justin Kloos is also a second-line center for the Iowa Wild out there. 48 total points on the season. So nice to see some of those guys do well. Very cool indeed. Brennan Mennel did not add another point during the course of the week and such. Victor Louvre, who has 7 assists since joining Iowa. Not too bad, the 22 games, but he's one of those guys who's probably destined for AHL most of the time, but maybe at some point he'll get called up to the Minnesota Wild, but probably not heading into the postseason, which I guess is a good thing because you don't want anybody getting hurt. I'm expecting Ryan Murphy to go down to the AHL again at some point. I got to think this whole Louis Belpedio thing has something to do with that, because there's no way you're going to go into the playoffs without Jared Spurgeon, obviously. At least you'd hope not, but at least planning to have him on the roster at some point, if you know what I mean. Obviously getting healthy again from that hamstring tear, as it took a while for him to get ready to skate again, and that's the unfortunate part. So we'll see how soon Jared Spurgeon returns, and we hope he does in time for Game 1 going into the postseason here, because that's why things kind of tie together with the prospects and such. Louis Belpedio, you're definitely going to see him tonight. Will you see him continually? Did you really want to burn the whole first year of that contract, though, just to play him in a couple games? I don't know. Is he really that ready to go? Or I'm kind of confused with the thought process here. Maybe some of you understand it a lot better than I do. I'm personally confused by it a little, but it kind of is what it is. I'm going to briefly talk about the NCAA hockey tournament as well. The Frozen Four heading in is basically, after last week's show, the Frozen Four had been, actually it hadn't been set yet. Minnesota Duluth will now be playing the Ohio State, had played the Ohio State Buckeyes in the first one and kept things short. And like I was saying, if it's a close game, Minnesota Duluth will win. Oh no, it was leading into the Frozen Four. Minnesota Duluth will win. And if it's heading into if it's obviously if Ohio State wins, they'd score early and often, and it'd be something like 4-1, something along those lines. But Minnesota Duluth kept it tight, kept it close, and they ended up winning, and they're back in the championship game for the second straight season. Notre Dame's goaltender not so great in the Michigan game, but they still were able to pull it off with a late goal, and Notre Dame is off to their first ever national championship game. Minnesota Duluth made it a few times back in the old days, and then they finally pulled it home in 2011. A lot of us hoping they do so this year. Nice run by Minnesota Duluth. They were only a 3 seed in their bracket there, but good on them for coming out beating MSU Mankato and Air Force instead of St. Cloud State. Bob Motzko, of course, the head coach of the Gophers now. St. Cloud State still looking for their future head coach. Will it be Mike Gensel? Maybe, but I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But St. Cloud's frustrated, but I'm sure they'll be just fine. It's obviously still a good program, obviously a popular place for a lot of youngsters to be, and I think they'll do just fine. At the end of the day, Bob Motzko hopefully, again, can help bring another big banner to Minnesota. As you will see, Big Ten banners and this and that, but let's get to the Frozen Four again, and let's win it this time, like we did back in the old days. It seemed like the Wild's or Gophers' record in the actual Frozen Four game is hideous over the course of many years. Championship game is about 500-ish over the years for the Golden Gophers. Minnesota Duluth, though, and Notre Dame. Minnesota Duluth, again, back to their second consecutive championship game. Hopefully they pull it off this time. But I think a lot of people would be favoring Notre Dame. They've been a pretty damn good team all season. Number 2 in the entire NCAA. I think on paper, Notre Dame is favored, but Minnesota Duluth is a clutch winning program. And I'm hoping Minnesota Duluth gets it done. They look a little more steady this year going in, and they're not running into a powerhouse like Denver. Denver is just scary, but Ohio State able to beat them 5-1 in the Elite Eight, we can call it, the region final, which was quite surprising for me. That's why I thought Ohio State had an outside shot of winning the whole damn thing. But once again, Ohio State only getting to their second Final Four in program history, and they've been around since the 60s. So, those of us frustrated with the Gophers, second semifinal game in the history of their program, and they've never been to the title game. So, yeah, that sucks. That's got to be tough. That's crazy when you sit down and think about that. So a lot of us frustrated with how the Gophers have struggled the past few years. You sit down and put that in perspective, and there's a lot of Division I hockey teams that never go anywhere, like University of Vermont and such. I was like, Northeastern, who the hell are they? And even Princeton, and they actually barely made it this year, and of course out they went in a quick hurry. Northeastern again, though. Northeastern. Clarkson obviously has had a rich history, as they've been far in the past, but it was mostly years ago. Cornell's had a lot of good teams, but they've never done anything either, unfortunately for them. Lots of good teams, and they always lose early. So it's mostly Boston U, Michigan, Minnesota, Denver, and teams like that go far. North Dakota, Wisconsin, most of the time over the course of many years. So kind of is what it is there. I'm definitely rooting for Nick Swaney and Minnesota Duluth here. That's the Wild prospect that's remaining. Of course, Avery Peterson, but he's not been in the games. So you haven't seen Avery Peterson skate once in this tournament. But Nick Swaney scored early on against MSU Mankato, and since he's been he's been in the mix, but he hasn't actually scored in some of these plays. But you can see he's got a nice future, and I'm looking forward to him playing for the Minnesota Wild one day. Another nice 7th-round pick by Chuck Fletcher. So good for him. At least he can pick guys after the first round, unlike Doug Risebrough. We can say what we want about Chuck Fletcher, about this and that, but at least he's getting guys late in the draft that end up possibly being something. And I think that Nick Swaney out of Lakeville, Minnesota, is going to skate for the Wild one day. I'm looking forward to that day. I am. Dmitry Sokolov continuing with his club, the Barrie Colts. They're in the second round now after a very strong first round for Dmitry Sokolov. A couple 3-point games. There are no points yesterday, but the Barrie Colts did win their first game in the second round yesterday. 7 goals, and Sokolov not factoring at all. Kind of surprising there, but he'll be a factor again soon. Dmitry Sokolov, looking forward to him playing at least at the AHL level, if not the NHL level, come next season. I'm definitely looking forward to that. He probably won't skate for the AHL this year because he's actually in the postseason this time around, not on the Sudbury Wolves or the Stuckbury Wolves, I would have to say, the last few years. And boy, when you get a couple, you get a better team around you, and look at Sokolov is capable of. He's got to be about the best player in the OHL right now. Right up there. Maybe not number one, but he's in the top group, and some of those guys end up having pretty successful careers later on. So looking forward to see how things develop with Dmitry. Other than that, really, right now, that should wrap up things with the prospects. Let's move back to the Minnesota Wild once again at this moment. Again, go Minnesota Duluth tonight. Jim Maddell, Sarah Maddell, and others out there that are UMD fans, Minnesota Wild hardcore and such. Stanley Cup Playoffs, we'll look at that picture here in a second. Only one game remaining. Things might shuffle slightly, but generally speaking, you kind of have a pretty good idea where we're heading. Minnesota Wild and San Jose Sharks will be facing off in the regular season finale tonight, as they are very much in the playoff picture. Once again, and good for them. They have 99 points, just like the Minnesota Wild. And they are second place in the Central Division. Strong finish to the season, generally speaking. Of course, not as hot as they were earlier. That's the one thing, is they've lost four. They had lost four in a row until they finally beat Colorado here. So it looked like the Sharks were guaranteed 100 points, and then it was four in a row. St. Louis, Nashville, Vegas, and Dallas. Not the easiest schedule in the world. It's the first three there were on the road. St. Louis hanging on to dear life. They may end up getting that final spot. They haven't clinched it yet. They lead Colorado by a point, and a crucial win by the Colorado Avalanche 2 days ago to keep them alive, to keep them literally hanging by a thread there. 1 point behind the St. Louis Blues, as that final spot will be decided tonight between the teams. Of course, between the Sharks and the Anaheim Ducks, it'll be about home ice, as they're literally 1 point apart as well. The Sharks currently hold on to the home ice, but the Ducks beating the Wild this week kept the Ducks in position to hopefully get home ice versus the Sharks in the first round. Pavelski and Burns leading the club in scoring with 65 points apiece. God, Brent Burns at 54. It's just 22 of them on the power play, 5 power play goals, of course. We all know what Brent Burns can do. We know the Sharks team very well. Of course, Martin Jones, the goaltender, he's had some strong moments, some hot and cold moments. The Wild have played very well against the San Jose Sharks going back into last season, whereas before that, the Shark Tank was literally the House of Pain, or I don't know. I mean, we were Shark food the past 17 years basically against the Sharks until the last year or so, where the Wild actually did a hell of a job against this club. Minnesota has already won the season series 4-3 on the 10th of December, and a 3-2 victory. That was again Jared Spurgeon getting the puck from Brent Burns, and then a feed from Zucker to wrap things up in overtime, where the Wild actually won a bleeping overtime game. I think that's the last time we won an OT. That was nice. You win some shootouts here and there, but you lose these damn overtime games. That was on the 25th of February. Beautiful moment for the Minnesota Wild, skating past the Sharks. Of course, the winner of this game will have 101 points. Should it go to shootouts, both of these will have at least 100 going into the playoffs. Hopefully the Wild can get to 100. That'd be nice to have back-to-back years with 100 points at least, where nowadays 100 points don't guarantee you anything. We will not have home ice advantage in the first round, but maybe sometime much later if the Wild go far. But I don't know. There's certain teams I wouldn't want to play. I would not want to play them in the playoffs, and that's the Los Angeles Kings. I think that spells loss. Loss. You just have the loss part, add a S to the loss part there. This one's tougher to pick than I thought. I think the Wild are going to win. I do. I think the Wild are going to sweep the San Jose Sharks. The Sharks, well, they're trying to get home ice. Minnesota would gain nothing out of the win, just other than you get 101 points. I just get a feeling they're gonna finish the season positively. I had a feeling earlier that the Sharks were gonna beat the Wild 4-2. I think it's gonna be something similar to what's been a very close, tight game. Maybe both teams get a point in this one. Maybe the Wild actually squeak it out in overtime for once, or they survive overtime and win in the shootout. Wouldn't be surprised if both teams came out of this game with 100 points, but I think the Wild are going to win it 3-2 in San Jose, California, even a 2-1 type of game. But I think the Wild escape this one. It's more about staying healthy than anything else. I think both teams will not take too many chances in this game. It's going to be conservatively played. Neither team, again, playing for any playoff lives or anything. The Sharks would probably prefer to have home ice advantage, even though it doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot in the playoffs. We've seen the Kings do what they've done. But once in a while, it means something. It meant a lot to the North Stars years ago. It did, even though they had to win a lot of game ones on the road, and they won game one in all 4 series, which is pretty impressive. And that put the North Stars in the driver's seat many, many years ago. Hopefully the Wild can pull off something like that this year. But there's always the big boy waiting for you. You get to the finals, and then there's Pittsburgh, or it's so bullcrap. And you hope that doesn't happen should the Wild go on a nice run, where Nashville had frickin' Pittsburgh waiting for them last year. That was disappointing. Frickin' Pittsburgh. God, tired of them winning. But if they win, they win. And I did pick them to three-peat this year at the beginning of the season. I just had a feeling. But I think the Wild will get 101 points. I think you go into the playoffs with a little win here, a close game. Most likely guy to score for the Minnesota Wild. Louis Belpedio. No, probably not. That would be pretty cool. Once in a while it ends up that way. Ooh, it's tough. Does Tyler Ennis finish his regular season with a goal? Does he finally score another goal? His first goal since early March? Is he gonna do it? Is he gonna do it? Huh? Nah. It's gonna wind up being Parise. He's gonna get his 16th goal of the season. Zach Parise will score against the San Jose Sharks tonight, and the Minnesota Wild win a close one, 2-1, 3-2 type of game. Maybe it goes to overtime, whatever, and both teams wind up with 100 points. But it will be a close, tightly played game. Alex Stalock will be in net. I think he'll have a strong game tonight. You got to think it's going to be Stalock against his former club, and let Dubnyk have the day off and get ready for Winnipeg. And that's what's going to take place. I'm kind of going 3-2 with Alex Stalock in net. He'll give up a couple of goals. He's got to be better than he was against the Los Angeles Kings. But a couple nights off for Devin Dubnyk. Unless Boudreau just wants Dubnyk to stay primed and ready, that type of thing. But I would hope you'd want Dubnyk to have a couple of days off and be ready to rock and roll come Winnipeg, because he is the starting goalie going into the Winnipeg Jets series, which is what we're going to talk about now. Or at least we would hope to talk about coming up here. The Winnipeg Jets, obviously one of the strongest teams in all of hockey during the course of the season, but the Wild have played well against them all year, and that's great. Washington Capitals, all this. I'm looking at the wrong thing. But yeah, Winnipeg with 112 points on the season. Should they win tonight, they'll finish with 114. Do the easy math there. Very amazing, strong season. They cannot win the division. The Nashville Predators are the President Trophy winners. Last year they were the underdogs. This year they are the President Trophy winners, and I got to think they're the favorites to win the Stanley Cup. Not that long ago, a lot of people favored the Winnipeg Jets to win the Stanley Cup, but who knows? They might not even survive the series because Minnesota's played well against them historically. Not last year, and it was weird, but this year they're playing better against the Winnipeg Jets, and that's been a very, very positive thing. You got Blake Wheeler with 90 points on the season, the former Gopher. What an amazing player he has become. Patrick Laine, obviously, also 69 points in the season, but 44 of them goals. 44 goals. A beautiful future for him. Wow, just amazing. Connor Hellebuck has had good games and has bad games, but generally speaking, he's one of the better goalies in the league. 6 shutouts on the season, 9.23 goals save percentage, goals against average of 2.38. Definitely better in every category than Devin Dubnyk. 43-11 on the season is Connor Hellebuck. He's 32 games above 500. That's sick. That's sick stuff. And this is a team playing extremely well going down the stretch here, wrapping things up and finishing in the 110s. Which is pretty damn good. They lost recently to Chicago, 6-2 on March the 29th, but then 4 games in a row, all wins. 3 of them on the road in Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal. It was a Canadian visit, and of course they also beat the Calgary Flames down the stretch here. The Flames, woo, boy, fireside chat. They were awfully frustrated with how their team finished this year. I think they thought Calgary was going to be about as good as Winnipeg was this year. I think they thought so, and boy, whew, heartbreaking for Calgary, as they're going to probably have a new coach and everything. It's going to be some changes for the Calgary Flames, maybe a new general manager too. Things looked so positive for the Flames, and boy, it went down pretty fast for the Calgary Flames. They're my second favorite team, so it's kind of sad to see them drop off. And yeah, it's okay to have a second favorite team. It's not like I root for them over the Wild. No, that would be insane. So it's okay to have a team that you kind of like also. We all have teams we're closet fans of, and I guess I'm just not a closet Calgary fan. I'm an open Calgary fan, but obviously Minnesota always holds dear to my heart as my number 1 team. Mark Scheifele, also 60 points on the season. I mean, just the depth of this Winnipeg team is insane. Dustin Byfuglien, 44 points. Obviously one of the tough guys in the league, one of the tougher guys to play against, but he also has extreme value with 37 assists along the way. A power play type defenseman. He's been extremely strong, and of course he used to play with the Blackhawks, so there's a little Blackhawk connection there. And he's been with Winnipeg for forever, so the Blackhawk days were a long time ago. But he does have at least 1 Stanley Cup with the Blackhawks years ago. A crazy valuable veteran. Kyle Connor, he's also got 30 points. He's got 56 points in the season. That's your 5th leading scorer, and he's got 30 goals. Oh, unbelievable. Up and down the lineup. The Winnipeg Jets are better than the Minnesota Wild, generally speaking. Obviously, they've had an amazing season, and it's kind of been a long time in coming with all these great players and developing guys, and of course, good, strong defense, good, strong goaltending. It's going to be a tough series, without a doubt. It's going to be tough. Winnipeg is 3rd in the NHL in goals for, 5th in goals against. Their power play is 5th in the league. Their penalty kill is 7th in the league, and in penalty minutes, they're in the middle. So, wow, they're good in almost every category here. It's going to be a tough matchup. Unfortunately, the Winnipeg Jets did win the season series 3-1. It's just kind of the way things go. Winnipeg Jets won very early in the year, 4-3. Close one there on the 20th of October. Winnipeg, another very, very close, frustrating game on Halloween night. 2-1 victory in Minnesota, and then a 7-2 thrashing on the 27th of November. So Winnipeg won 3 games in a row against the Minnesota Wild. That was Kyle Quincy's last game. Enough of that. And it was an overall awful game. Alex Stillak was a net, if I remember correctly, and not a good game for the Minnesota Wild in general. Well, both of them were in there in that game. Yeah, both of them were in net, and neither one of them played well in that game. Dubnyk and Stillak, very, very yucky game. And the most recent one was on the 13th of January. So these teams have not played in months. It's been quite a while. This was a nice win for Minnesota, 4-1 victory. Again, the 13th of January. Granlund, Zucker, and then Dumba had 2 goals in the game. That was great. That was a fun night. I'm starting to get it back again. Yeah, Minnesota Wild had 41 shots on net, a dominating performance. And this was the game. Yep, I remember this very well, actually. This is where you saw Blake Wheeler doing the skull chant. Minnesota was beating Winnipeg, but of course the skull chant started taking place as Minnesota was about to play the New Orleans Saints. Little did we know the Minneapolis Miracle would take place. A lot of us thought the Vikings would do well against the Saints, and they did for a little while, and down things went in a quick hurry until the Minneapolis Miracle saved us at the end of the day. That was pretty awesome. Cool to see Blake Wheeler doing the skull chant. Of course, a Minnesota native, and he still loves his Vikings, and that was nice to see. Minnesota actually beat Winnipeg finally, as we did not get swept in the season series. It's like I thought we split, but then it's like, no, we didn't split with the Winnipeg Jets. It's like you sit down and remember, and you're like, oh, that's right, we lost all those games. God, it was nasty. Kyle Quincy, it's amazing how long he stayed on the Minnesota Wild before a move was made. He was so disappointing, but I suppose it was a bit of an investment. I mean, almost $2 million for a guy that sucked so bad. Then you bring in Nate Prosser, and things changed so dramatically after that. It was cool to see. Zach Parise had already returned, but that was the beginning, and when he wasn't very good yet. His timing was off and all that. He did get 4 shots on goal, but all of them were, easily stopped by Hellebuck. But overall, a wonderful game for Minnesota. That's the only victory the Wild had against the Winnipeg Jets. We had a good run against them last year, but then this year it was a completely different story. Winnipeg, a much, much stronger team this year, of course, as they will definitely be a Stanley Cup contender. Should they survive Minnesota in the first round? Right now, I got to think the Jets are favored. This could go 7, though. This could easily be a 7-game series. Maybe Winnipeg finally ends the Minnesota Wild's perfect record in the 7th game. But I wouldn't be surprised if Winnipeg wins this in 5 or 6. And it probably will be something like that. The Ryan Suter loss was a huge loss. If Ryan Suter was healthy, I could maybe go with Minnesota in 7. Get a little gutty here and pick the Wild to pull this thing off in 7 games. I think the possibility exists that the Wild could do that. Should the Wild win the opening game? It's anybody's contest here going in, and that would be a lot of fun. It's anybody's guess what could happen as you head forward. But obviously, if you don't win game 1, it's it's an uphill climb. At least win one of the 2, and then you come home. I think one way or another, as long as the Wild can gain a split in the first 2, they have a fighter's chance of winning the series. Going down 2-0, there's still a chance, but it's really hard. And you got to win 2 in a row to just get back in it. And I don't think the Wild will win 2 in a row. And I don't think so. I think the Jets would win one of the 2 games in XL Energy Center. You hope you can split, and then if you split again, so be it. And then then it's a best out of 3 there with 5, 6, 7. You win game 5. Wow, amazing. That would be awesome. Maybe the Wild get this thing to game 7, and if the Wild do get it to the 7th game, I think they win. I think the Wild would win again if they can force the 7th game, but I do believe the Winnipeg Jets will finish off the Minnesota Wild in 5 or 6, unfortunately. That's kind of where I'm standing right now, and the Wild are definitely not immortal at home in decision games. In fact, we've lost a ton of game 6s at home over the course of time. It's extremely frustrating. Even though you win the 5th game and you stay alive, you come home and lose game 6, and that's disappointing. But you win that 6th game and force a 7th, then I think the Wild win. I love the Wild in Game 7s, boy. They've done it, and they've done it, and they've done it over the course of time. They're 3-0 in 7th games in the postseason, and that could hopefully end the Boudreaux curse for himself there, as things have not gone well for him in the 7th game, and many of you know. Let's look at the playoff bracket for fun right now. Right now, if the season ended, St. Louis would barely be in, so it's the Nashville Predators are awaiting either St. Louis or Colorado. Other than that, things are pretty much set. The Kings and the Knights will be playing in the first round. That's a matchup that the LA Kings are probably very, very excited about because, yeah, I think the Kings are going to beat the Golden Knights in the first round. As good as the Golden Knights were this season, I don't know. And if the Golden Knights, put it this way, if the Golden Knights survive the Kings, they'll go to the West Finals. Yep. If they survive the Kings, they'll beat the Sharks or the Ducks. But obviously, yeah, I mean, it's either first round exit or West Finals for the first team ever to make the playoffs, in their expansion year. Obviously, the second six. No, it was easier to make the playoffs in your opening season. St. Louis went to the Stanley Cup Finals in their first season, their first 2 seasons in existence, and then haven't been back. It's kind of funny. The St. Louis Blues, way back in the late 60s, went to the Stanley Cup Finals twice and lost them both. That figures, doesn't it? Oh, that's got to suck. You go all the way and then you lose, and then you never go back again. St. Louis Blues have been to the Stanley Cup Finals twice, but they lost them both. The North Stars lost to the Blues in that second season. We went to the Campbell Conference Finals that year, and unfortunately lost. I love the NBC coverage. As you look at all these channels here, NBC itself, NBC Sports Network, CNBC, USA, and NHL Network, all covering the postseason like a blanket. I think they do a great job. I love what NBC does for hockey. It's nice. I love the job they do. They cover it like the NCAA tournament where you can watch any game, and that's good. Things are different these days. It's better where you can watch any one of these playoff games on any of these NBC channels as long as you have cable at least, and that's great. Be nice to see the Wild back in the playoffs again. Again, the Winnipeg Jets. I think Jets win in 6, unfortunately. But right now, if I'm a betting man, the Los Angeles Kings will beat the Golden Knights in 6, and the San Jose Sharks will probably beat the Ducks, but I don't know. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, the Ducks are on an uptrend. They're looking better. I think the Ducks beat the Sharks. And then the Kings and Ducks in the second round is all California, baby. That's a Pacific Division, all right. LA Kings go to the West Finals, I think, at the end of the day. I think they get to the West Finals. Nashville's going to beat St. Louis or Colorado in 5. I think they'll probably beat the Jets. Boy, that's kind of a shame where the two teams have to play each other in the second round, but that's how the bracket shapes up. It's like the old days. Regardless if you're the 2 best teams in the conference, you got to play each other in the second round. That's kind of a bummer. I think Nashville's going to return to the finals, and yeah, I think they're going to win this time, probably. That's just my guess, but let's look at the other side. Columbus and Pittsburgh, you know who's going to win that series. The Pittsburgh Penguins will win in 5 or 6. Devils and Capitals, that's a good one. Capitals, number 1 seed again. God, that's bullcrap. Yeah, but Boston just barely could not finish ahead of Tampa Bay, at least as of right now. That, believe it or not, let's see. Nope. It's not official, 100% official yet because Boston's got 2 games to play yet. But again, if the season ended, Tampa Bay would be the number 1 seed playing Philadelphia, as they'll probably clinch over Florida. They're 4 points ahead of the Florida Panthers, so I don't think Florida's going to make it. But what a nice run. Florida Panthers get to 42 wins, 92 points. It's a shame that they probably won't make the playoffs with a nice run that they've had during the course of the season. Again, back in the old days, teams like Edmonton would be in the playoffs. It's crazy to imagine. I'm shocked that the Arizona Coyotes wound up with 70 points. That's kind of crazy. They still got 70 points. Huh. Buffalo back to being the worst team in the league again. God, it doesn't matter who they get in the draft. They're the worst team again. Casey Middlestat getting his NHL debut as he's not returning to the Gophers. Of course, Lindgren on his way to the Rangers. Both of those teams struggling, but maybe one of these days they'll get back at it again. Pittsburgh's going to beat Columbus, and they're going to beat the Capitals or the Devils. Well, the Devils might beat Pittsburgh, but the Capitals won't. So that's basically chalking Pittsburgh as the Eastern Conference opponent for probably Tampa Bay. I would love to see Toronto make a nice run here. It would be cool to see the Toronto Maple Leafs go far in the playoffs like they did back in the old days. But I don't know. Tampa Bay Lightning and Boston, that's going to be an epic second-round matchup, boy. That's going to be a 7-game series. And it doesn't matter who has home ice advantage. It matters who's playing better at that time. Yeah, it's going to be Tampa and Boston in the second round there. Oh, boy. It's like I'm picking these on the fly, and I think it's more fun to do it this way. It's more fun to do it this way rather than just this team. Because this isn't television. We don't have to do everything in 2 seconds. I like the way the Bruins are playing right now. But I mean, Tampa Bay's been the best team most of the season. I want Tampa and Nashville in the finals. That's what I want. And I think I think that's what I'm going to lean towards right now, with Nashville winning in like 7. It's going to be very, very close. A great series. Nashville and Boston, or Nashville and Tampa would be an awesome series. It could be a rematch of last year, though. Stupid Penguins still might do it. God, I wish they just missed the playoffs. I wish they struggled and missed it. Somebody's got to knock out the Penguins. Please, Boston or Tampa Bay, please knock out the Penguins. Put an end to this once and for all. End this run. I don't want to see a three-peat. No, I'm tired of Penguins, man. Tired of the Penguins. I mean, they would officially be a full-on dynasty, though. If they win 3 Stanley Cups in a row, that's a full-on dynasty. And, of course, again, Sidney Crosby's got 3 Stanley Cups already during the course of his career, and he's just 30. Pretty amazing. Still got a long way ahead of him for his career. Wow. That's a lot. There's a pretty good chance Pittsburgh wins the Eastern Conference, but I'm hoping and banking on Tampa Bay and Nashville in the Stanley Cup Finals. Odds are that probably won't happen, though. Like, somebody's going to get upset at some point. God, I want Tampa and Nashville, but I think the Bruins are going to find their way to the finals, but Nashville will beat them in 6 or 7. The Nashville Predators will win their first Stanley Cup. You'll see a Nashville, Tennessee Stanley Cup at the end of the day. That's probably where I'm leaning, obviously. As long as it's all about Pekka Rinne, because obviously the guys in front of him are good. Pekka Rinne's good too, but again, just a couple of not-so-good games can cost everything. And, of course, if the Pittsburgh Penguins continue to play the way they do, well, everybody's in trouble if Pittsburgh wakes up the way they do every postseason. But right now, I'm going to go with Nashville and Boston in the Stanley Cup Finals, with the Nashville Predators winning their Stanley Cup this season. I'm going to wrap up the show with that. Going to give out the contact details at Brave the Wild. At Brave the Wild, that is the Twitter account. Please do give that a follow. Want to thank Hockey Podcast for sharing the show, and Vince Germano for retweeting it. You're very awesome for doing that for me, and I appreciate both of you for that in a big way. Facebook.com/Brave the Wild. Facebook.com/Brave the Wild. Do give that a like and join the page and join in the conversation if you could. It'd be greatly appreciated. There is a phone line, 209-736-7877. 209-736-7877. It is a voicemail. Do treat it as such. Mention you're calling in for Brave the Wild. Do your statement, shout out, comment, question, and opine, and join me on the air. It would be greatly appreciated. Want to hear from you so bad. There's the Call Now button also on the Facebook page. Do give that a do give that a click if you want. You join the same phone line through Facebook Messenger, so it's free no matter where you're from throughout the planet, or even on the International Space Station. But okay, I always say that and just have fun with that. But that's how you join in there. And then the final route to get on that way is audio submission route. Again, you don't have to use the phone line with this one. There's no limit. The voicemail has a 3-minute limit just because it's a voicemail. But the audio submission route, which is where you use a free voice recording application on your smart device, you record for maybe 5 minutes or so, save it, and send it to paladinolive@yahoo.com. Paladinolive@yahoo.com. And I will convert it into an MP3 file. Thanks to Zamzar or Converto.com. Thank you very much for that, to those websites, for helping me there. One other final thing, again, want to give a shout out to MNW players. Pavel Bunet and Marek Skyba out of the Czech Republic. They cover the Minnesota Wild top to bottom. From the top players on the NHL roster all the way down to the bottom of the ECHL in the college rankings, as we keep up with everything Minnesota Wild. I'm an admin for the Facebook page. They also have a website as well, which keeps an eye on all the farm system and the NHL roster. Very, very fun website. Everything Minnesota Wild, top to bottom. Marek Skyba and Pavel Bunet. Shout out to Minnesota Wild Hardcore, Jim Maddle, Sarah Maddle, Chance Kostick, David Kostick, and Chad Wolski and others out there. Wonderful, wonderful website. Always keeping up with the Minnesota Wild game day threads, news, and all the above. Chad Wolski often posts Michael Russo athletic articles, which we appreciate so much. Awesome articles about everything. Louis Belpedio, the way this guy's been playing. Of course, Ryan Suter's injury, amazing story. I sat and read the whole thing, and it's really something else. So I want to thank Chad Wolski for providing that for us from the Athletic there. Very, very appreciated. Very appreciated, and can't thank him enough for that, as those are very valuable articles. I love what Michael Russo has to say. It's too bad he's not on the Star Tribune anymore, but again, with the Athletic, the quality is a bit higher because he has more freedom to just kind of go. He doesn't have to keep it down to a certain size like you do with an actual newspaper, so kind of is what it is there. So, again, thank you all for listening. Please tell your friends about the show. Give a positive rating on iTunes or Stitcher if you could. And, again, jump onto those phone lines one way or another. You can join on this show. It'd be greatly, greatly appreciated. until next week, we're going to keep up here. Hopefully, again, I think I'm going to end up recording next week at some point because the weather's not cooperating for working outside. It's February. It's February 1st right now. So it's still winter. Even though it's April 7th, it's still winter. It's a very long winter this year for some reason. I don't know if it's the witch and the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe doing this or what's going on. But, oh well. I don't hate winter, but we have work to do. So, but at least it's allowing me to keep up with these podcasts for the moment. Once the work does start, the schedule gets a bit more sporadic. You won't get like every Saturday morning. It could be a random Wednesday. It could be a Thursday. It could be a Monday. It could be whatever, whenever I'm available to record because of rain or whatever, or like just not able to work outside for whatever reason, then I could jump on this and get caught up. So the schedule will get sporadic very soon. So that's what happens every single year with this show and the others. Until next week, which I'll probably be recording because it's still probably gonna snow again coming up here. So not gonna get warmer either. So until next week, when hopefully the Wild lead the Winnipeg Jets 3-1 or whatever it'll be, 2-0 or something. Hopefully, hopefully the Wild continue that up, and I'll talk to you then.